Hello, friends. Yes, my name is Eric Nantz, and I am super excited to be telling you about a journey that we have started about looking at a new era about using the intersection of Shiny and WebAssembly for the potential of a clinical submission pipeline. So let's first do a little story time here, and let's put yourself in a situation where there has been a pivotal study that has just entered its data lock. It's gotten all the results, everything is available, and it is time for review. The results are in. This is one of the most exciting times in our industry to help bring an innovative medicine to patients worldwide. And so it is time to start digging into those results. Is there a few results? Not always a few results. Oftentimes there are many results. If you are familiar with the concept of tables, figures, and listings, a pivotal trial could have hundreds, sometimes even over 1,000 of these results. And in the history of the pharma industry, these were coming, not too dissimilar to what you see here, in paper format. And these were delivered to regulators, even in truckfuls of them, in an actual submission. I don't know about you, but when I see this, I would feel just a tad bit overwhelmed trying to figure out what are the insights from these results. Now, of course, in technology, in the world of technology, we have the advent of digital methods. And now, technically speaking, you could probably fit all those 1,000 results and more, even on a little USB thumbstick. So yes, we are in the digital age, but those are still static type representations or just happen to be in electronic formats like RTF or PDF and what have you. Is there a better way that we can make these results easier to digest, easier to review? And my hypothesis here is yes, there is, because we have the Shiny package, and more recently, we now have WebR. And the combination of these, I think, can bring us to this new era. Now, it's one thing to have this idea, but how are we going to put this in action so that we all in our industry can benefit from looking at this together? That is where the efforts I'm talking about today have been part of what's called the R Submissions Working Group, which is a fully sanctioned effort from the R Consortium. And the key part here is the collaborative nature of this, because this is not just sponsors or industry members, it is also regulatory members that are hand in hand joining on this journey. It is also being able to create submission deliverables with open source in mind. This is not a proprietary solution. We want everything to be transparent and, again, collaborative. And we also want to emulate what it is actually like in the day-to-day of a health authority regulator reviewing these results that we are producing in this working group. We don't want to just do like a what if. We want to really get down to the nuts and bolts of what it's like to look at these results. And this is one thing I'm so excited about. Innovation is not just a buzzword here. We are encouraged to push the envelope here in this environment, which is not always the case when we get to our day-to-day of clinical work. Now, why am I so excited about this? I have been using R for many years than I care to admit, but in particular, the Shiny package, since it first came to be. I've been so passionate about it that I wanted to connect with the Shiny community via the Shiny Developer Series. Some of you in this room have been on my show here, where we have showcased just what is the potential what Shiny can bring in the world of data science and the world of analytics. And of course, I can't just look at all of our other contributors. I want to join in on this fun too. So I would even do these weird live streams sometimes of hacking together Shiny apps. It might say it even gets a little injected into a Shiny personality. It might say, I am addicted to Shiny. I am very enamored with this technology because it changes everything to me. Now, that's one thing in my enthusiasm about Shiny. And I have used Shiny a lot in my day job, and I've done a lot of pretty nifty things. But sometimes it can feel like, yes, I'm making a difference here, but I kind of yearn for more. I want the industry as a whole to benefit from this as well, not just in our respective silos. And many years I was wondering, what is the best way to have an impact that benefits everybody? My eyes opened when the R Pharma conference launched. This is from Harvard University, our first in-person event. for our pharma. And I saw there were like-minded individuals like me, passionate about open source, passionate about the intersection of Shiny. And in fact, some even dubbed this like a mini Shiny conference because we had so many content about the way Shiny is being used in pharma. And working groups spun up from these initiatives. And I thought, okay, this is real now. This is real. How do I get involved? So that's why I've been so fortunate that the R Submissions Working Group and other efforts have dovetailed from this situation. So let's take a look at, we can't just start WebAssembly right away. We had to figure out, okay, how does Shiny actually work in the context of a pharma-based submission? We created this pretty fit-for-purpose application in Pilot 2, we called it, last year, where it's using publicly available CDISC data sets to show what it would look like when you have these typical static-like results, but yet in a friendly interface. They use the state-of-the-art table generation packages and make it easy to navigate. They're not sifting through RTF files. They are using this in one place. Very legible, very clear, and this was successful because to date, before this pilot took place, there hadn't been a lot of consensus on what a actual Shiny app in a submission could look like. And we also wanted to explore interactivity, not just the quote-unquote static stuff, that give them hints of interactivity to start drilling down into the data. This was successful. We are very pleased that this was successful. But with that success, of course, it's not always trivial to get all this set up. So part of the deliverable of this mock submission in Pilot 2 was to tell the reviewers, how do you actually get this up and running? So let's look at the steps I had to put in what's called the Analysis Dataset Reviewers Guide. First, they have to extract the submission bundle that's going through a special gateway process. They have to install R that matches the R version that we use in the development environment. Maybe they want RStudio, so of course we encourage them to use what they're comfortable with. But some packages kind of needed some compiling stuff on Windows, so we need to put R tools for that. Then we have RM to help with package management because dependency management is critically important in this space. Then installing the application package library, which again, manifested by RM. And then finally, you can run the R process. It's doable. We showed it could be done, but that's a lot of steps. What can we do to minimize this setup? Let's imagine now we bring in WebAssembly into this picture. What, in theory, could those steps look like for that reviewer to get up and running? Well, still extracting the submission bundle, but from there, launch the application in a web process, view the app in the web browser. I don't know about you, that seems like a heck of a lot easier than what I was showing on the previous slide about how to bootstrap all of that from scratch. So that is encouraging, but what is really kind of happening under the hood, so to speak, when we go from that traditional method to this WebAssembly method? And it took me a while to even grasp this myself, but then I thought about it more. And we can think of the Shiny app as the engine in a traditional sense being powered by the combination of R and Shiny itself. They are actually driving the application, but that is hosted on some kind of server process, whether it's POSIT Connect or a cloud-based deployment. There is, under the hood, R and Shiny are driving it. But when we bring WebAssembly in the picture, what is the actual engine? It is now the user's web browser. It took me a while to really grasp that, but everything in that self-contained browser experience is what we had in the traditional sense, but now this is different. We don't need that persistent POSIT Connect application process running here. We can now let their browser do all the heavy lifting. It's a radical shift, but one that I think has immense potential here. But what does it take when we look at this pilot submission, this new WebAssembly pilot submission, to do that swap of those two engines? It's not always seamless, but that's why we do these pilots to explore this. First, for WebR, there is their own binary format for packages, somewhat different than what we have in the traditional CRAN repository. So we have to verify what is compatible. We learned through the hard way that Golem, the package we used to bootstrap the previous pilot's app, was not compatible because of a dependency it had as not being compatible. So we switched to the Rhino framework, which had, compatibility. So we had to do a little pivoting there under the hood. But once we did that, the rest of the packages were working just fine. And then we have, of course, the Shiny Live package you heard about this morning, which is a way to help export a traditional app into the WebAssembly powered format. We had to augment it a little bit because you do a little trickery under the hood to inject the CDIS stats data sets into the exported application. We had tremendous help from Absalon, who helped partner with us on this effort to make that happen. But we want to build user-friendly wrappers into this because we want the reviewer not to have to really care about all these nuts and bolt details. But also, again, we want to be where the environment is for these reviewers. So on top of building all this, on top of building these wrappers, we rigorously tested this with custom Windows virtual machines because that is what the reviewers are using. And yeah, sometimes administering R and other things on Windows can be, to be politely, a little tricky. So I needed a way to have a disposable yet reproducible way to test all this, and credit to Martin Wimpress for creating what's called Quick EMU on Linux to make that very seamless. But what those wrappers look like, we basically have a utility script that has a bunch of source functions. We help them extract an application bundle and then running the app in WebAssembly. We also gave them a choice to run the app in the traditional Shiny sense if they wanted to really test the equivalence. But in theory, these three functions now can get them up and running with the WebAssembly version. But this is a fast-moving project, and I knew ahead of time when I embarked on this journey that there would be a lot of developments. And just a month ago, I had things kind of ready for this, but then George Stagg, the author of WebR, throws this little Mastodon post, and I want to highlight this specific part here. Dependencies in Shiny Live version 0.2, they can now be frozen and bundled in your app. Does that sound kind of familiar? Sounds a bit like RMs, right? Because we didn't have anything like that when we first started this pilot. So then I see this news, and because of the collaborative nature of the pilot working group, I got in touch with FDA. I said, there's a big development here. Are you supportive of us exploring this? And to their credit, they say, go for it, because reproducibility is a huge part of why these pilots are successful. So went back to the dev toolbox, updated Shiny Live, updated my utility functions, and now we have the assurance that once they bootstrap this app, they're going to have that same set of packages over and over every time they run it. Now, what does this actually look like? I don't want you to think that this is some radical change. This is actually quite similar to the previous application. That's the idea. We don't want this to look like a radically refactored application. This is, for all intents and purposes, the same app I showed you a few minutes ago. It is just now the engine is different. The same car, it's just a different engine. And our reviewers are super excited about the fact that we have the potential to ensure this environment looking like what we did last year, but now with a more smooth effort. Now, one thing I do want to mention, because we're talking about in the context of submission here, that there is, great power in bringing interactivity to an application. Now, in the context of submission, we have predefined objectives that all of our static results are based on. And what we had in the previous version of an app was these filters that were powered by Teal were actually filtering every output. Hence, the model inferences, the p-values from that, were also getting changed when they did a subsetting, say, by age or by other factors. That can introduce potential for confounding and misinterpretation to the reviewers. And you hear the term p-hacking sometimes. It is a little misleading when you give that power to everything. Our compromise, and one that is an ongoing discussion as we think about the role of Shiny in submissions, is we are allowing that filtering within the visualization module at this time because we're not doing inference on that. It's looking at that time to event profile. I think this discussion will be ongoing, but again, these pilots helped enlighten that issue And now with the WebAssembly combination potentially making Shiny easier to deploy, we're going to have to think about these fundamentals more and more in this space. So there is a bright future ahead, in my opinion. We are in the process of submitting this Pilot 4 right now. They just cleared it. They had a good readout of a previous pilot for Atom data sets created with R. So now it's our turn to start the process. We want to continue and investigate the features of reproducibility. And also we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to streamline execution process. If you notice, I showed you that we have a couple of utility functions that help run that web process. Technically, we're using R to drive that web process just because they already have it installed. Obviously, you could do this with Python, you could do this with other frameworks, but we want to make it as easy as possible for them to have that web process going on that machine. I am greedy though. I hope there is a future where instead of having to drive a web process for one of these other utilities, that it's literally, maybe it will never happen, that it'll be as simple as opening up a folder, browsing to it locally on their Chrome or Edge browser, and everything just works. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we need some web process to start to make that execution possible. And there is another component to this pilot. We're using container technology, in particular Docker, which ironically you hear great things about getting Docker, up and running. Not so much on their side. They have a lot of challenge in their infrastructure, which again was kind of a mind-blowing moment that they are actually more excited about the WebAssembly portion because guess what? Everybody's got a web browser, whether you like it or not, you all got a web browser that can run WebAssembly. Container technology can be a bit finicky, especially when you go to other OSs. So this has been a total team effort. That's why I'm so excited about this. This is not just me coming up with this random idea. We've had great support from the R Consortium in these pilot submission working groups. We've also had tremendous help from Absalon in the early stages of this pilot to look at the early versions of Shiny Live, the early versions of WebR, and just what can we do to make this replicate that previous pilot as much as possible. A lot under the hood for making that happen. And of course, our colleagues at FDA, who again, have been on this journey with us, not just reacting to us, they have been proactively asking for, or providing their input, finding the issues, being open to real-time debugging sessions, something we don't typically get to have. So it was very, very powerful to make sure that we're all on the same page with this. And yeah, we're not stopping now. We have, big plans in 2025 to hopefully make this even more seamless for them. So this has been a big journey. I definitely thank you for your time here. You may know me more from my voice. So I got links to where you can find my various media ventures, but I'm here at the conference. I'd love to talk to you more about this if you have questions. And I do want to leave with a personal note. Why am I in this? Not just for the tech of it, not just for the impact of this as a whole for innovation. We all have our stories, right? I have two very important people in my life dealing with cancer at the moment, my mother, my mother-in-law. And I don't have visions of Shiny and WebAssembly curing cancer. But what I do have visions of, if we can speed our way of getting treatments for this horrible disease using novel technology, I'm here for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. That was really inspirational. I think we have time for one question. Was very well upvoted. So the question is about security concerns. Are there any security concerns for running that Shiny app and WebR, and how did you handle them?
That's a very good question. What we learned is that the browser session is quite sandboxed by design. Everything is, in theory, as self-contained in that, sometimes even more so than what you get in the container side of it. But there is an issue where we had to inject the data sets directly into that application bundle. So if you do have to access data from an external source, those credentials, if you're hitting like an API or a database, those would have to be baked into that bundle as well. So if you have to access data from outside places, yeah, you could have security concerns there. So these are all some of the fundamentals I want to keep talking about as we go forward with the potential of this technology. But yeah, excellent question.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.